One area of Excel 2010 that has really changed is the area of pivot tables, and I think they're much easier than they were in 2003. For example, I'm going to sit in this list, and to create a pivot table I'll choose the Insert tab in the ribbon, and to the far left of the ribbon I have the Pivot Table button, which I'll click. It immediately picks up the range I'm sitting in, but if that range was incorrect I'd simply hit the red arrow and go and define by dragging the range that I did want to pivot, but I'll just choose OK. What happens is we get a new sheet with what they call a field list on the right hand side and a pivot table on the left hand side. There are many ways to create the pivot table, but the easiest way I feel is simply to drag the fields from the list into the various sections you see here. For example, if I'd like my categories to be rows, I'll drag category from the field list into the row labels section, and now my categories appear as rows. If I decided actually no, they'd be better off as columns, then I'll drag the category ID into the column labels box or section, and now they appear as columns. If I'd like to then show the supplier as rows, I'll drag supplier into the row labels box, and here they are here. If I then grab product name and put it into the values section, I actually see a count of the products by category and by supplier. I can easily rearrange things. I can drag count of product out of the values box and perhaps put the unit price into the values box. I can change the unit price from a sum to perhaps, using the value field settings, an average. I can also go back into the average values, change its value field settings to a number format such as currency. And so it's very visual and very easy to create a pivot table simply by dragging things from the field list into the various sections. What we can also do is when we look up in the ribbon, we can see that pivot tables are controlled by two tabs. Either what you are wanting is in the Pivot Table Tools Options tab, or it's in the Design tab. When it comes to the Options tab, you have common buttons like the ability to refresh a pivot table should the source data change, and even to be able to hit this button to change the data source if perhaps the range increases or decreases in length or width. But I'll just choose Cancel. If I go back to Design, what's new in 2010 are the various pivot table styles. And I can simply roll over the various options using Live Preview to see what they would look like. And if I go back in, I can change my mind. What you also have is the ability to apply banded rows. When I tick banded rows, it actually bands the rows alternately, so it's easy to read and follow the information across. I can turn off or on the banded rows, and I could turn on alternatively banded columns, or both. You also have the ability to apply blank rows, perhaps insert a blank row after each item, which also makes it easier to read. You can also change the report layout to outline, or tabular, or back to the compact, which is the default. And you can control grand totals and subtotals using these buttons. What's really nice in 2010, and only in 2010, is to apply what they call slices. To apply a slicer, I'm going to go to the Insert tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to click the Slicer button. What I'd like to do is I'd like to slice the information by discontinued, and I'll click OK. I now have a slicer, and this is what a slicer looks like. And I can move it, and I can resize it. If I want to filter this pivot table so I only see products that are not discontinued, I'll hit No, and you can see the figures have changed. And if I click Yes, these are the figures for those products that have been discontinued. And these are the figures for those that haven't. And this simply clears the filter. If I click back on the pivot table, I'll see the list, and I may change the pivot table just to give you another example. Let's say I'll take that out, put product name in. I might decide to choose category and then supplier. And see how easily the pivot table just changes. And I might decide to then ask for those that are not discontinued, or yes, they have been discontinued. And so this is an easy filter, and I can clear it as well. And I can easily click on the edge of the slicer, press the delete key, and delete the slicer. Let's say I'll take supplier out. And so here's a list of the products: 20 Chinese, 29 gourmet, 9 spicy, and let's add another slicer. Insert, slicer, and this time I'll go for supplier. And OK. And you can have as many slices as you like. This is just a very brief example. So this, when I click Dining Delights Distributed, these are the number of products they provide in the various categories. So they predominantly supply gourmet products, whereas Food Flyers, for instance, they predominantly supply gourmet products as well. So you can choose how you want to slice the information. I can even hold the Control key and ask for 2 of them, or 3 of them, and clear the filter. So a slicer is very much like a report filter page, where you can actually filter or slice the information by various options.